Assalamualaikum and good morning or evening. So today we are going to move on to the new topic. Okay, as if you still remember under my part, there will be two big topics. Okay, we have done on the first big topic, which is the function and behavior of the Malaysian construction industry. Okay, starting from today, which is lecture 4 until lecture 6, if I'm not mistaken. We are going to focus on the second big topic, which is national and local government economic policy in a built environment. So in this topic, we are going to focus more on issues related to the economy. Okay, we are going to learn on how what type of problems of economy that we are going to face, and how those problems could occur in our country, and when it happen, what we need to do in order to solve the economic problems. Before we go into that matters, we are going to have a look on the basic introduction of economy that you need to know before we go into more detail about it. Yes, I mentioned many times there are two important elements in the economy that we need to know, which are demand and also supply. Okay, these two elements are very important in any countries around the world. So basically, we are going to use this demand and supply in order to manage the economy of the country. So in order to manage the level of demand and also supply, we can analyze the level of demand and also supply by applying what we call it as a microeconomics and macroeconomics analysis. I believe you have heard about this term before. Perhaps you have learned during your diploma level, or maybe for STBM student, you have learned it on your construction economics 1. So what we are going to do today on these two analysis, I'm going to recap a little bit on it, give a few scenarios before we go into detail about it. Okay, firstly, we have a look on the microeconomics. Okay, if you focus on the words micro, okay, it brings to you the terms itself are defined as a small scope. Okay, micro is a smaller scope. So means that when you want to carry out a microeconomic analysis, they are going to focus on the individual decision making done by individual, we as a consumer, pengguna, and also firms, okay, private sector companies, construction companies, and so on. Okay, we are going to have a look on how those individuals respond to the economic situation or to the economic policies introduced by the government. Okay, for example, like if the government introduce a new tax system, okay, how we as a individual or we as a consumer respond to the new tax system. Or maybe the government introduce new tax system for private companies, okay, for contractors, for example, how those companies respond to it. So that's what we call it as a microeconomic analysis. So perhaps, for example, like if the government increase the tax level, perhaps our spending power will be reduced. We are going to control our expenditure. Same goes to the firms or companies. All right, so that's what we call it as a microeconomic analysis. The scope is more smaller. Okay, meanwhile, macroeconomics is contradict from micro. Okay, so macro, in this case, we are focusing on the bigger scope. Okay, we are concerning about the economy as a whole, the level of demand, and also the level of supply in the economy. So in other words, we can say that if we want to run an analysis on the macro level, we're going to see on how the government handle the economy regarding, for example, like how the government cater the issues of inflation, for example. If the inflation is too high, what the government need to do. And then another example is the unemployment rate, tahap pengangguran, kadar pengangguran, how government can monitor the unemployment rate so that the unemployment rate should be less than 4%. And of course, we are talking about GDP, so how government can expand the economy of our country at the macro level. Okay, so that's what we call it as a macro economics analysis. Okay, the scope is much bigger. So I believe you get an idea what is micro and macroeconomics. But actually there is another analysis that we can call it as a mesoeconomics. Okay, I believe everybody will learn a new terms today, which is known as mesoeconomics. If you take the words mesos actually, mesos is extracted from the Greek word. Okay, Greek word. Okay, means intermediate. So here we are going to combine the territory shared by the microeconomics and macroeconomics to study a specific sectors. So means that when we want to carry out mesoeconomics, it's a combination of micro and macroeconomics. Okay, the simplest example that I can give you is that we want to study the performance of construction industry towards GDP, or the contribution of construction industry towards GDP. Okay, construction industry is one of the industry that we have in our country, that what we call it as a microeconomics, and we want to study the GDP. GDP is macro level, macroeconomics analysis. So if we combine both studies, we can call it as a mesoeconomics.